to another edition of Oklahoma Politics and You. I'm your host, Steve Byas, along with Gary Cooper. We're hosting the program this evening. And tonight we're going to talk about a historic first here in Oklahoma. Oklahoma became a state in 1907, 100 years ago, and during that time the Democrat Party has controlled the state Senate every single second of those 100 years. However, in these past, the elections this past November, the Republicans elected just as many state senators as did the Democrats, and we are now in a 24-24 tie. For the first time in state history, the Republican Party is no longer in the minority in the state Senate. Because of this forcing of the tie, the Democrats have agreed to a power-sharing structure that we're going to talk about here in a moment. And the man that's kind of in the center of the storm, if you will, of this power-sharing, that's kind of hard to say,
it is.
Power-sharing structure is State Senator Glenn Coffey. Welcome to the program.
Thank you very much. It's good to be here.
And before we get into talking about the major points of the power-sharing structure, let's talk about Glenn Coffey for just a minute.
Okay.
Tell us a little bit about your family background,
sure,
educational background, and then finally political, how you got involved in politics.
Okay. I grew up here in Oklahoma. My dad has been in sales all my life, and that's how we came to Oklahoma. Educated in public schools here in Oklahoma, and the way I got involved in politics was I was home painting my house one day, and you know, it gets kind of boring scraping paint, and I went out and got the newspaper and saw that my predecessor, Howard Hendrick, had taken a new job, and I had about 5 days to make up my mind whether I was going to run for office or not. My wife came home, and I told her, asked her what she thought about me running, and what I thought she'd say was, "That's the dumbest idea I've ever heard. Get back out there and finish painting the house."
Yeah.
and fortunately or unfortunately, she said, "Let's give it a try."
Yeah.
And so before I knew it, I was elected to the state senate, and
what year was that?
That was in 1998.
1998. Okay. And so it's 8 years later, almost 9 years later now.
Right.
You're in the. It's kind of odd. I don't know whether to call you the minority leader, the majority leader, or just the leader of the Republicans.
Well,
what's your title?
The title that we've agreed upon is co-president pro tem.
Okay.
And that's the title that is part of this agreement that we've worked out.
Okay. So then, okay, I guess it's time to get into that. What are the major points of the power sharing structure created by this 24-24 tie?
That's a good question, and I'd like to correct you on one thing. The voters have actually elected 25 Republicans. Unfortunately, we had one individual who chose to switch parties. Otherwise, we would have had a Republican majority this time.
Yeah, that's right.
But the way this came about was we both recognized with the 24-24 tie, even with the lieutenant governor being part of the Democrat Party, both sides recognize that if you don't have some type of power sharing agreement, the result is chaos. We would have had Mary Fallon in the chair on organizational day. We could have passed a set of rules. They would have challenged those. We would have been in court all session, and it really would have been chaos. And so we decided to sit down and see if we could work something out. And we basically drafted a contract that says we're going to govern together. We're going to have co-chairs, and what that means is they will run the committees together. And we will, for example, Senator Sykes will be chairing the Criminal Jurisprudence Committee. Senator Nichols, obviously with his background in law enforcement and as a prosecutor, chairing the Public Safety and Judiciary Committee. He's going to address the issues of criminal justice and crime and funding issues. They each have a co-chair, a Democrat co-chair, that they have to agree on the agenda. They have to agree on the bills being heard. Mm-hmm. And there's a little wrinkle that I'll get into later on that. We have co-floor leaders. And essentially, both sides have to agree together on what needs to be heard. Now, their focus, I have to say, the Democrats' focus in this agreement was they're concerned about what's going to come over from the House and how could they stop a lot of that. Our focus was how can we get some votes up and down on the floor on a lot of these bills that traditionally have been killed. And what we worked out was a situation where each committee co-chair, each floor leader, and the two leaders, myself and Senator Morgan, the pro tem, have the ability to take 3 Senate bills or 3 House bills and say, even though you and I can't agree, I want this bill to be heard. Mm-hmm. You still have to get bipartisan support to have that bill heard, but it at least forces the issue on issues that are important to the public. Mm-hmm. People won't be able to be hiding behind the fact that the bill didn't get a hearing. Well, hopefully, and it's 3 Senate bills and 3 House bills, so there'll be a pretty good opportunity to bring a lot of important legislation to committee and hopefully to the floor in the Senate.
Yeah, well, it's a little bit confusing to some people, because if you go to the United States Senate, the most important person in the United States Senate is the majority leader. Right. The president pro tem is more or less an honorary position.
Right.
But in Oklahoma, the president pro tem is the big guy. Okay.
Right.
And so I guess you still have floor leaders.
We do still have floor leaders.
Okay, so the position that if you were 23 instead of 24, you'd be the minority leader.
That's right.
But you're co-president pro tem, and you also have a minority leader. I mean, a floor leader.
That's right.
So
it's confusing for
us.
us.
Majority leader, minority leader. What do you call these?
We're calling them the Republican floor leader and the Democrat floor leader.
Okay. Okay. What will be the role of the lieutenant governor, who is Jerry Askins, who is a Democrat? What will be her role in this arrangement?
That's a great question. I suspect that you will not see her breaking tie votes. There was a lot of discussion during the election about the importance of the role, but the reality of it is neither side really has an interest in that happening. If it's a tie vote on an issue that the Democrat Party would win political points on, I don't know that you would see all 24 Republicans in the chamber when that happened. I think the flip side is, if there's an issue that we wanted to make a point on and the Democrats felt like they'd be embarrassed by it, or that it'd be putting her on the spot, they'd make sure one of their members wasn't there. Explain why
most people say, well, the Democrats would win 24-23. Explain why, if it came down to that, why that wouldn't work for the Democrats.
The lieutenant governor can only vote in the case of a tie. So if there's one vote missing, she wouldn't be able to cast a vote, and you have to have 25 votes to pass a piece of legislation.
That is majority of the total membership, not majority of the members present.
That's correct.
Okay. Okay. One more question, then I'll bring Gary in here. How does this 24-24 tie affect funding for staff and that sort of thing? Are you going to be able to add staff in the state Senate?
We actually, this has been difficult for me because, my goal when I came to the legislature was to try and reduce the size of government, but we're in a situation where equality or parity means growing government a little bit here, but we haven't. Part of the agreement is that we both have the same leadership staff. He has the same budget that I do, and we can hire based on what our needs are for our respective leadership staff.
Okay. So there will be some additional than it was before.
That's correct.
I remember that when I first started kind of covering the legislature with the newspaper, back in those days, there were like 9 Republicans, and I've heard stories back when I think Denzel Garrison was the only state senator who was a Republican. They gave him an office in a closet and stuff like that.
Right. In 1936, there were no Republicans in the state Senate. Yeah. In 1978, there were only 8.
Yeah.
When I came in just 8 years ago, there were 15 of us.
Yeah. So. Okay. Well, Gary, ask our guest some questions.
Well, it sounds like from what you're saying that so far at least everything has been amiable as far as the power sharing agreement and the contract that you folks have made with the Democrats. That sounds positive. Let's turn more to some of the legislative issues that are going to be coming up this session. What are some of the key things that the Republican Senate leadership, what are some of the key things that you're going to want to see brought up in this session, positive things, and then maybe talk about some of the negative things you're afraid are going to come up and want to stop?
That's a great question. A lot of Democrats recognize the immigration reform issue, and certainly Senator Sykes led the charge and beat an incumbent Democrat on that issue, and he and Randy Terrell will be bringing back Representative Terrell's bill, and I expect at least based on the campaign promises that were made by both parties, that it ought to receive a fair hearing. And
now that bill was specifically going to accomplish what? What were some of the points of that?
That bill focused on, if you ask Oklahomans what their biggest concern, obviously we aren't the border control, we don't deal with a lot of the federal aspects of immigration reform, but certainly government services to illegal immigrants is something that Oklahomans overwhelmingly are concerned about their tax dollars going towards those issues. And this would have changed that and held the state accountable. Also, I think it would have had issues related to holding businesses accountable who hire illegal immigrants.
Mm-hmm. Good. So that's one you're going to definitely want to bring up.
Absolutely.
What are some of the other issues that you're hoping to see some movement on?
Well, tax reform is something that I think we have to continue to take a look at. We get told time and time again by liberals that Tabor's not a good idea because it's going to break the bank. Well, if you're not for that kind of limitation on spending, what limitations are you for? The income tax is one that time and time again we hear from business people all across the country. We'd like to come to your state, but I have to take a pay cut to bring my business there. We've made great strides on that, and certainly in a surplus time, there's going to be an opportunity to discuss that more. There are a lot of issues, the tax consumers that are pushing to grow government and countermand that opportunity. But I think we've got to continue to have that discussion, accelerating the elimination of the estate tax. Mm-hmm. There are property tax reforms we can take a look at. There are a number of things that we have to do more to quite frankly, just begin the discussion about tax reform.
What about the flat tax? Is that a possibility of seeing that come up for a vote?
I don't know if anybody has proposed that. I know that that book has generated a lot of discussion. If you look at a lot of the countries, the former Soviet bloc countries, dramatic growth is occurring as a result of the same concept, mm-hmm. a little bit different wrinkle. It's one that I think we need to have the discussion, especially if we ever get a sincere debate about really reforming and restructuring Oklahoma's tax structure. It's one that has to be considered.
Well, especially given the nature of our top bracket compared to other states, et cetera.
No question.
What about law and order issues? Are there any particular things you're wanting to see any movement there on?
Well, consistently people have pointed to corrections and tried to say that this minuscule part of the budget, it's less than 5%, is breaking the bank of education, which is in the high 50 percentile rank of our budget. We have a lawsuit by the teachers union that they think they ought to get 98% of the budget. The fact of the matter is that Oklahomans, the first priority of government is to keep Oklahomans safe, and we've got to protect Oklahomans. The question is not, when it comes to prisons being full, it's not a dollars and cents issue about whether you let a violent offender back out, because we know that there are going to be repeat offenders who are going to harm your family, my family, and we've got to find ways to keep the violent offenders locked up, have programs once they're out to help them become responsible citizens, but it shouldn't include early release and letting the prisoners out early. And I know there are a lot of proposals out there, and we're willing to talk about programs if somebody's truly a drug offender, helping them go straight once they've served their time. But letting them out early just to go to a drug treatment center is not a good answer.
Is there a need to actually build more prisons?
Well, I think there is a need for more prison beds. What we have seen happen since Governor Henry's been in office, he has eliminated a lot of our contracts or not paid the increases to the private prison beds, which were available to us at a lower cost than the state prisons. We've shoved those prisoners back into state beds. Now they're full. And now everybody's saying we've got to build state beds when the private prisons are inviting out-of-state prisoners because we're not utilizing them. Why does it make sense to spend tens of millions of dollars on a new prison when there's available bed space from the private sector?
Unless your intention is to deliberately create a crisis to give the excuse for releasing some of them. Perhaps.
Exactly.
What are some of the issues, now we've already kind of touched on this, but what are some of the issues that you know the Democrats are going to want to bring up, things that you think you're going to have to work hard to stop?
Well, one that may not become an issue because of the Democrat majority in Congress, but minimum wage is one that we continue to hear them talking about. Certainly, I think that's the worst idea. I'm opposed to the concept of the minimum wage in general because all it does is it forces small businesses to fire people who need the jobs the most. But if you're going to have a minimum wage, it needs to be nationwide. Why in the world, when we have a disadvantage from a tax standpoint and other factors, would we want to create more disadvantages to our border states by increasing our minimum wage? It makes no sense. But it's one that's going to ring popular with certain people that don't know the facts.
Okay, good. Any other issues besides minimum wage you see them bringing up that you're concerned about?
Sure. Healthcare is a rising cost for all of us. Quite frankly, lawsuit reform is what's needed to bring a lot of that into in tort reform to bring that under control. However, there will be a big push, I'm sure, to increase the cost of benefits and let the state pay for a lot of the healthcare costs. We've got to find solutions to have a competitive environment for healthcare costs because we don't have competition. It is a regulated industry. Costs are rising too high and we can't afford it. But a lot of the solutions that are being proposed cause me great concern.
Yeah. Steve?
Discussing the minimum wage, I've been doing a lot of reading about the minimum wage and writing my column in the next issue of the Oklahoma Constitution about the minimum wage idea. And one thing I think a lot of people have not thought about is that if you raise the minimum wage, you're probably going to increase the high school dropout rate because, to a kid, $800 a month seems like all the money in the world,
right.
And so that's the main reason that a lot of them drop out of school, because they think that job at Sonic is so great, and it's really kind of a sad situation. In the past, conservatives have been kind of disenchanted with the conservatism of the Republicans in the state Senate, and we've seen it for years. There'll be some bill in the House, we'll have like 32 Republicans will vote against it, and it goes over to the Senate. You flip over there and look at the Senate Journal, and it 1, 2, something like that. It's been explained to us in the past that this is because the Senate rules are different. They're just a lot more, everybody is dignified in the Senate, and they've been in the minority, they don't have, and all that kind of stuff. Will we get votes on things that before in the past we would not have gotten, and you think things are going to change a little bit with it being tied?
I believe so. I used to tease my friend Bill Graves that sometimes there'd be a bill that didn't have much in it when it was in the Senate.
Yeah.
It had more consequences and more teeth when the House vote, and so there were differences about what the bill looked like. But in the end, the fact is, we all lose if we don't see a difference in the Senate the next 2 years, and I hope 2 years from now with a Republican-controlled Senate it'll be very different. But we've always been called the deliberative body. There's been a fraternal type aspect to it that's discouraged fights in the Senate. And certainly when we were fewer in numbers, there was probably, it was a different environment, and that was before my time, and I can't imagine the environment of what those guys had to deal with. But times have changed,
yeah.
And certainly I think we have some strong conservatives in the Senate. Randy Brogdon certainly leads the charge on important issues on fiscal conservatism and social conservatives, where hopefully we don't have Senator Kane to block bills through his committee, where hopefully pro-life legislation will be more prevalent in the Senate. My hope is that you will see a big change on those key issues that are important to conservatives, both on the fiscal side, but also the pro-family issues as well.
Well, Senator Steve and I are ready to put together some type of a fund and take donations to make sure that we bring in bottled water for the state senators and ensure you don't drink the water that's actually available to you there. Perhaps that'll help as well.
Maybe so. Maybe so.
Do you think Governor Henry's role in this? And I don't agree with Governor Henry, and so I want to make sure you understand. I'm not comparing him to Bill Clinton, okay, in a lot of ways, but back when the Republicans took control of both houses of Congress in 1994, a lot of people thought, man, we're in control now, we're going to do all these great things, and Bill Clinton was able to block a lot of things.
Sure.
Do you anticipate that Brad Henry will block any progress, like on immigration and pro-life bills and
that's an unanswered question at this point. We have a governor that's a lame duck governor who says he's not running for anything else. Up till now, a lot of Democrats have accused him of being a Republican in sheep's clothing. I would argue that point. I don't think I agree with that.
He was my state senator for a while. He was not a Republican.
No, he was not. No, he was not. but I don't know what happens there. I think behind the scenes, obviously, he's going to try to discourage certain things from getting to his desk. But he's shown that if things get to his desk, he's willing to sign it. He signed the strongest pro-life legislation we've seen probably in 20 years. He signed language relating to the gay marriage issue that went to a vote of the people. So he has not shown an indication that he's willing to fight those issues in the public that he knows that are popular with Oklahomans. With this new dynamic, that remains to be seen.
Well, of course, last time, if you remember his campaign, you would have almost thought that all these things were Republican ideas, that he was the one that came up with the ideas.
I guess when you're governor, when it happens, you get to do that.
Yeah, you just kind of pick what you want there. What effect will the 24-24 tie have on control of the county election boards? Any?
Well, it will in this sense. What has been tradition in the past is the senator for that county is involved in the hiring and selection of the election board secretary and the election board positions. And so if you have a county that is not divided, then that's what will happen across the state. When you have divided party like you have here in Cleveland County, there would have to be agreement among all the senators to make a change.
So they're probably in those counties, like the guy out west,
Owen
Laughlin,
or Mike Schultz.
They have
and do.
Okay, they do. Okay,
yeah.
And okay, we got about 3 minutes left here, so I'm going to ask you another question here about, in practical terms, this tie. Well, you know, one of the things, and I don't mean to knock the state Senate, but one thing I've noticed over the years is that they tend to be absent, it seems like, at a higher percentage than the House members, and I don't know if they've got jobs they got to go do or what it is, but
right.
Do you think that the fact that it is so close will lead to senators doing the job they've been paid to do and be present?
Well, you know, some of that is you're off the floor, and my situation has been from time to time you're negotiating with either the governor's office or the other side. You'll miss a few votes, and that happens from time to time. But in a 24-24 tie, I have stressed to my members that attendance is critical.
Yeah. In
the committees, on the floor. There will be times when there won't be critical votes, but when we know that there is an important vote, authors of bills are going to have to make sure that their votes are there. We're going to have to work together to get things done. We
have about a minute and a half. Gary, do you have any another question?
Just one last quick question that we often ask people who come here. Why are you a conservative?
Well, I'm a conservative. I grew up under the presidency of Ronald Reagan, and Winston Churchill and Ronald Reagan are my heroes. Ronald Reagan proved that if you reduce government, you return money back into the private sector, it can do a better job of creating jobs, growing the economy. We are still the beneficiaries of what Ronald Reagan started. Every time we've raised taxes, we've hurt the national economy, but what he started was a change in a mindset that said, empower Americans to do great things, and they'll do it. And I think that philosophy works so much better than saying that government's here to help you, that government is a solution, when there's no evidence that government's ever been the best solution for anything.
Great, thank you, Steve.
Sure. Cleveland County, we did our part. If every county would have replaced a Democrat with a Republican, like in the Lawler-Sykes race,
we'd have a strong Republican majority right now.
That's right. It's just unfortunate that our other race, Ron Davis, fine man, lost to
He is a fine man,
Sparks,
absolutely.
And but we're close. Maybe in 2 years it'll come
Absolutely.
over.
I hope everybody will work hard to reelect Senator Nichols. We've got to keep that seat and win a couple more.
Okay.
Great.
Well, it's a real honor to have you on the program. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for being with us this evening, and please be with us next time for another edition of Oklahoma Politics and You.